Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Life After Sports, Volume 2. My name is Danielle. I am the CEO and co-founder of The Connect. I am joined by two very special guests tonight, Mr. T.J. Baker, who will be hosting the chat, and former NFL player Marcus Smith II. We're going to chat with Marcus about transitioning out of the NFL, the importance of mental health for an athlete, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation while I pass it over to TJ to kick us off.
Absolutely. Thank you, Danny, so much. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is TJ Baker, and I'll be hosting today's segment, Life After. And we have an illustrious guest. We have a 6-year NFL vet. We also have an All-American coming from Louisville, and a gentleman right now who's doing his own training thing and has just spawned so much great stuff going on for him in his life and being a great dad as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you Mr. Marcus Smith. Mr. Smith, good evening, man. Good to have you with us, good brother.
Man, good evening, man. Good evening. I appreciate you guys having me, man. This is a topic that I love talking about, so I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Definitely. So let's begin with this. With so much to be made in the news and the media, it's shut up and dribble or just put your nose down, get in the trenches and just block for somebody. How would you define in common terms today's athlete?
Man, that's a great question. I just feel like as today's athlete, I think that we have more of a voice. We have more to talk about. I think being in the realm of us and the pressure that comes along with being an athlete, I just think that, we do need to speak a little bit more and speak more about our mental health and how that affects us. And so it could be mental health, it could be political, it could be whatever it may be. Like if we have an opinion, people listen to us, people voice their opinions and listen to us because I think we have a lot to say and we have a pedestal that, people will listen.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into your career, man. Let's talk football because you have an illustrious career, All-American as a Cardinal coming from the University of Louisville. But I'm curious because football teaches you so many different things about life: accountability, responsibility, respect, leadership, and so much more. Who put the ball in your hand? Who introduced you to the sport? Who you want to give credit to for that introduction to the sport that you love?
Man, my parents for sure. My mother was actually a huge athlete. My mother played basketball, softball, baseball. She played baseball, and she also ran track. And so my dad was known around, where I was from, Columbus, Georgia. He was known for being the fastest in the city at that point in time. And so I was crazy when I was younger. Like I was literally like bouncing off the walls, going crazy. And they put me in football when I was 5. So that's when it started. I started playing the game of football when I was 5. It was flag football. I did that for 2 years, and then I started playing tackle. But my parents, man, they put me in, and man, I fell in love with it. And the thing is, man, I know when we were kids, people basically when they watch like the NFL, I used to be the ones watching the NFL and not want to go to sleep. I would watch the full game with my dad, even when I was younger. So I was just infatuated with the game.
Definitely. So speaking of the game, man, I see you got your Seattle shirt on today, man, but let's talk the game for a second before we get into what we really want to talk about today. I remember back in the 90s, man, the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the other squads that you've been a part of, one of the other organizations, were known for defense. The late, great Jerome Brown, the late, great Reggie White. And then you also had an opportunity to be a part of the Seattle Seahawks. When you played in your career, talk about you being a defensive specialist yourself, big on movement. What was it like being a part of those storied franchises because they're known for defense as well?
Man, it was amazing being a part of the Seattle Seahawks, man. It was amazing being a part of that defense. You walk in that locker room, you see all the greats, you see the Legion of Boom. I actually got there when the Legion of Boom was still there, right? Mm-hmm. It was one of the guys wasn't there at the time, but you still had Richard Sherman, you still had Cam Chancellor, you still had Earl Thomas, yep. Bobby Wagner. You had the guys that made it, right? And so, man, it was an honor to play with those guys, and I learned a lot from those guys, man. It was an honor to play with them.
Absolutely. So we're here to talk about mental health. I know you're a big proponent of it. You realized some things during your playing career when I did my research about you, and even we see what we've seen in the last, let's say, 3 to 4 months. Naomi Osaka is one name I want to bring to mind. Simone Biles, just several weeks, 2-3 weeks back.
Right.
I want to bring those names to mind. They've had bouts with mental health. Thinking about your own bouts, thinking about what those young ladies did, and you all being professional athletes. Talk about what that element is like, and when you look at those young ladies, man, how do you correlate and put yourself in their positions as well?
I know exactly what they're going through. I know exactly what they're going through. What Simone Biles explained and what she talked about is exactly what I went through. She talked about anxiety, and she talked about shaking. She talked about being restless and not being able to perform at the best of her ability because she had the world, or she felt like the world was on her shoulders. She had done great for so long, and she looked at it as she felt like that she had to complete other people's opinions or expectations of her. And that's what it feels like. It feels like a weighted expectation that you have to feel. And one thing I always say is that success is not a destination, it's a mindset. And so if you take that mindset in the way that I think of it, if you take that mindset, I believe that most people, when they get to a place, they already know that they're successful. When I was successful way before I got to the NFL, but because of the expectations that were put on me, I felt like I needed to do more in order to prove something to somebody else rather than prove it to myself. And so that's why you see somebody like Simone Biles, who stepped away to get herself together, not to quit, because people were saying that she was a quitter. No, I'm stepping away to get my mental health together so I can do what I know that I should be doing, right? So and then with Naomi Osaka, I think it was an interview that just came out actually that she broke down.
Broke down, yeah.
And I just did an interview with a young lady. Her name is Nia Cooper. She's 16 years old. She plays tennis. And one of the things that she told me as a tennis player is that you don't have your coaches out there with you. You have nobody out there with you. If you look at your coach or do anything, you're disqualified. So the mental barrier, you have to be on point all of the time. And that is emotionally and hard to do.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a tennis player myself. I played D1 tennis, and the toughest part is just getting yourself together mentally, moving on from that point without having the coaches there, without even having your teammates out there with you to pick you up when you're struggling. So I can't even imagine on the level of Naomi Osaka, the mental struggles that she goes through. One of the things question I had for you, Elena Deladon probably said it best, that no one speaks to you more than the voice in your own head when you're going through any type of mental situations. Can you elaborate on kind of what she means like that, especially for a professional athlete?
Yeah, man. So what she really means when she talks about the voices in your head is that you're your worst critic. You're always, it doesn't matter what your coaches say, you are always going to be your worst critic. And you're never going to feel like that you are enough, because that's what sports does. We always have to make the bar higher, right? We're always trying to reach greatness. So when you look at it that way, you look at it to a point where it's like you're thinking in your head, well, hey, I know why I'm here, but should I be here? Is this the point where I'm supposed to be?
Right.
You kind of ask those questions because you don't necessarily know in that moment, because you're by yourself, right? And you don't necessarily want to ask your counterpart, or you don't want to ask anybody else because you don't want them to think anything of you, right? I know as men, we oftentimes think that, our brothers or people that are in our corner might think that we're weak, might think that we are just in a place of not mentally stable. I know when I was playing, man, that's the word that used to come out a lot. And that's why I never said anything, man. I didn't want the coaches, I didn't want the owners or anybody to think any less of me because I was dealing with some issue that is not talked about in our community, right?
Mr. Smith,
And
let me
so
ask
that's
you.
what that's what I feel like she means. Like when you talk about the voice in your own head, it's really just you talking through to yourself, right? But it's negative. It's basically you at war with yourself.
Mr. Smith, you just brought up a good point, and I'm gonna have a transparent moment myself. But before I get there, it's 2021. Is it going to be 2022, 2023 to make it cool for Black men to go seek help, speak to professionals, that type of thing? You're right. The stigma is in our community that it is weak or you're not strong enough. Like, it's going to take more professional athletes like yourself. What's it going to really take for everybody to realize? Because I've had, friends, colleagues, co-workers, people dealing with all walks of life and difficulties in their personal life that still won't go seek help because they just don't want that stigma. What is it going to take?
It's two things. So
Okay.
the first thing is, in order to end the stigma, you have to start the conversation.
Okay.
Right? The first thing you have to do is you have to start the conversation and you have to acknowledge that you have a problem. Right? And you have to accept that that is the problem, right? You have to accept that okay, I have a problem, so what? Right? And then the second thing is, don't be afraid to speak about it, because somebody like me or you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Danielle, right? If we continue to speak, if we continue to have the conversation, if we continue to bring light to mental health, right? At some point, even if you're not saving 5 people at a time, it's always going to be one person that is looking at what you're saying, because 9 times out of 10, you'll have a person, they're like, you know what, man, I went through that.
Mm.
And now that's not saying that they're going to go to therapy.
Right.
That is just getting the conversation started in their head. Like, wow, I might be dealing with something for real, because now you looking at me. I had a near-death experience, y'all. I had a near-death experience. I seen death, right? That's how I feel. So if you can see me on the other side, you could be on the other side too, right? So that would, I feel like, would make them want to maybe seek the help that they need, right? You don't necessarily have to do, like, I don't push therapy on people. I say this is a tool that you can use,
Absolutely.
right? And you can do many things, right, that'll help you with your mental. It could be working out, it could be positive self-talk, it could be journaling, it could be reading books, it could be talking to your therapist, whatever you want to do. So, that's just how I see it.
Absolutely. Everybody waits for their number to be called, whether it's wherever you at in the draft. People wait for your number to be called. And, some of the times you hear, I can't wait to get my mom a house, to get my mama a car, whatever it is. I did an interview with an athlete, a former athlete who's now retired. And we talked about mental health. And one thing that they said, you know what? Mentally, I don't know what was more draining. The problems that weighed on me from my family and the expectations from my family, or the expectations of the fans and the organization. Mrs. Smith, which one was it for you, basically? Like, were you able to delineate between the two, or were they both tough, or did you have family support so the fan and organization thing wasn't so bad? But talk about that for you.
I think where we come from, right? Where I came from, it was, my parents were like middle class. And I knew that they worked endlessly to, make ends meet. They did whatever they could, like, for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that used to weigh on me a lot, as a young person. And I wanted to do whatever it took to help them. But I realized that, a lot of the times that's not necessarily the answer. So to answer your question, I think that it was evenly yoked with the fans, with the pressure of people, and then the pressure of my family. Because the first thing I did was I bought my mom a house, right? Not realizing that I have a duty to play at the highest level and to be great at that. Not just good, you got to be great all the time. You have to be on all the time, right? And so my first year in camp, my focus was really just focusing on getting my mom a house, when really I should have been focusing on my craft.
Mm-hmm.
And that weighed on me a lot, even though I did that for my mother, and that it was a great thing at the time. When you look back at it, you feel sometimes like you could have did stuff a little bit differently, right? Because mental health is nobody else, it's just you, right? So if I would have took care of me, if I would have just made sure that I was good, right, then everything else would have just fell into place. So I just felt like there was a need at that point in time to do that.
You just said something that was interesting and unique, because you said being masterful at your craft. That's what you wanted to focus in on. And the NFL, like any other organization, is a brotherhood. And I realized that now more than ever, y'all as a brotherhood are doing a lot more for not only yourselves, but actually the sport. You guys put your bodies on the line. And one thing that, is coming to light more and more, because you put your bodies in the line as top tier athletes, as the best in the world, is what's going on with CTE and the mental health aspect of that. And that's something people sometimes don't realize what you all do with that. And I think about, number 55, a legend in the late, great Junior Seau. And he began to hear voices right before, unfortunately, he did what he did. Talk about, do you still think that the league is doing enough? Can there be more done? How do you guys analyze your bodies now? Is the league getting better? Or there's still, leaps and bounds that still need to be done in terms of making sure you guys are mentally secure with that aspect?
One thing about me, I'm always be honest. And I feel like the NFL, they've taken some small strides, but they're nowhere where they need to be as far as protecting the players, as far as CTE goes. There's some things that I can't disclose about CTE that, I found out when I stopped playing. And I just feel like somebody like Junior Seau, his life could have been saved. That's how I truly feel. And a lot of us go through that. Like, I've had 4 concussions, right? Concussions tie into with mental health, right? Then you look at the NFL, right? They don't like talking about concussions as much, right? So if mental health ties in that, they know that question is going to come up. So what I'm trying to do right now is push that as much as I can, is talk about mental health as much as I can, regardless of, how they feel, because the players is what make the league go.
Right.
Right. And if they're not sane, if they don't come correct, then you don't have a league. Right. You don't really have a league. So my thing is, how I feel is that, man, if we can really get to the weeds of what the issue is, right, get us protected, because it's almost like we going to war every day. It's no different.
Absolutely.
Right. Friendly fire, it don't matter. Like, I got a concussion, and it wasn't because of how I was playing. It just happened. Right. And that happens a lot. That happens a lot of time in the game, man. But I definitely think that they could do a lot more than what they're doing, and protect the players. And I'll say one more thing.
Go ahead, take your time.
Like, what about the guys that don't make the team? The guys that are pushing through because this is their dream.
Right.
Why can't we protect those guys too as well? Because you got guys out there right now playing in preseason with concussions and not telling nobody. Because they're trying to make the team. Yep, they're trying to make the roster. And they can't go to a therapist. Why? Because the therapist is a part of the team. So in their mind, they're like, well, I can't go to them because the therapist might go upstairs and say, well, he got this problem. And then they're going to say, well, is he mentally stable? That's the first question that they ask. So we got to break that. Like, that's a huge barrier that's hard to break. And I really want to get to a place where we can break that.
You just said a mouthful right there. Going to the team therapist and not being able to trust the team therapist to have your best interests in mind. That's crazy to even think about, to even fathom as a professional athlete, let alone, just a regular person not being able to trust someone who's supposed to help you. So that was a word right there.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard, especially being African American, when most of the therapists don't even look like you. Right. So you're trying to take someone who's grew up in an environment. The only thing he saw from a white person was either killing or him handcuffing his father, or it could have been rape. It could have been whatever it may have been. And you expect them to go in a room and tell them their problems. You have to make it comfortable for them to do so. And if it's not a comfortable setting, they're never going to go in there. I had to go in there because it was either life or death. And I made a decision like, all right, look, I got to do this. Told my wife, look, this is what we're going to do. And then, I loved it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we got to get them in there first.
Right.
But they're not going to just go in there.
Mr. So I got to say this, man. Like I said, y'all are world-class athletes, and two people come to mind as well. I know we talked about the late, great Junior Seau, but I think about two guys that came from Detroit, and Barry Sanders, and especially recently inducted into the Hall of Fame, Calvin Johnson, Megatron. And Megatron and both Barry Sanders, they walked away. And I think one thing that I got the messaging from Calvin Johnson in several interviews that he did, that he just couldn't take it no more, and he didn't know where to turn. And then he realized, marijuana or cannabis or self-medicating was the way out for him. He said he had plenty much more left in the tank, which you can see on the field. He was killing. He was one of them dogs, but he walked away. And the self-medication became the mask to deal with things. Do you think players and professional athletes, not just in the NFL, but overall, utilize a lot of self-medicating rather than dealing with the problems head on and being able to body?
Yes, I used to. Because we don't, if you're smart, you don't want to get hooked on pills. You don't want to get hooked on those things because, like they say, we as football players, because I can't really speak for basketball, but I know for a fact, football players, it's literally like when people say it's like 5 car wrecks, that's how we feel after a game, right? Because your adrenaline is pumping. You don't feel it when you're in the game, but when it comes down, that's when you feel it, right? And in the past, we've seen like guys that have gotten hooked on painkillers, right? And they can't get off of them when they're done playing. So I always thought about that, right? I was one that smoked marijuana. Marijuana would help me go to sleep. It would help with my joints, pain, everything. When the masseuse used to massage me, it would be CBD oil. It wouldn't be anything else. It would be holistic remedies. And a lot of guys do that, right? They in the NFL, and I'm gonna just be blunt, the NFL, they pretty much make it to where they know guys are gonna smoke. All right. They know guys are gonna smoke. But in order to keep a lid on it, they make sure they test guys once a year. Because they know deep down that smoking helps you. It doesn't harm you like how they have said it was in the past. And I think that's how a lot of guys, cope with either being hurt, or dealing with a mental issue, can't sleep, anxiety or whatever. That's what I started using it for. I started using it for anxiety. And it definitely helped me. So that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, real quick, knowing as a society, we know the cannabis, CBD, and all the other things that are benefit to athletes, not just athletes, but people in general. Do you foresee that changing in the world of sports, that it won't be on the ban list, the substance abuse list anymore? Do you foresee us going towards that? We just saw Sha'Carri, who one of the fastest U.S. women in track, not be able to run because of an outdated information on cannabis use. So my question is, do you see that changing for athletes?
I do see it changing. It's going to take some time, of course, because, the United States is always, they take their time with stuff, right? Just in general. And I think the NFL is going to get there. I think it's some stuff that they have to get past in order to do that. That's why they do it the way they do it now. They pretty much say, hey, we know you're going to smoke, but we just need you to, right? We just need you to be clean. And they tell you when to be clean, right? So I think now in the new CBA, you can still fail a drug test but you can't get in trouble for it. So they're still gonna know that you're smoking, but you just get in trouble for it now. And I definitely think it's gonna get there for sure, because you don't want your players hooked on anything else. Like if they can do self-assessment with a holistic remedy, then you want your player to do that rather than them go off the ledge and be killing themselves because they can't use a certain drug that's stronger. You know what I mean?
Right. You talked about the A word, Mr. Smith, in this anxiety, and I suffer from it as well. But I suffer from it definitely with something that's been big in the last 12 to 24 months, and we're talking about police and police brutality and things of that nature. We've seen Roger Goodell and the NFL step up to do certain things, but let's really talk about you all in terms of your anxiety and your mental health, being sometimes targets by police officers in your community. As high paid athletes that people know and they try to take advantage of, how do your brothers, deal with stuff like that? What does that layer look like? And do you realize and do you feel maybe that the NFL is starting to get it right too in terms of that aspect? Or is there more to delve into with that as well? Because we still see, still a lid on the cap thing. We still don't know all that took place, but I just want to get your thoughts on that.
First of all, respect the cap. I want to say that.
Okay.
Because it's a guy that I know, and he's a really great dude, and I just feel like they missed the mark when it came to police brutality. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I've probably been pulled over since 2016, probably 15 times. Wow. So, luckily by the grace of God, most of those times, I got out alive and they didn't mess with me, right? But mentally, that anxiety,
yeah, exactly,
that you feel when you know stuff like that is going on in the world, and I'm by myself, and I know I got a family, it weighs on me a lot. I think about it a lot, right? And I think now, with Roger Goodell, I think they should still do more, because I think they only do what's hot. And this is just the God honest truth, and me speaking my truth. I feel like the NFL only does what's hot at the point in time. So if police brutality is hot at the time, they'll take their time to talk about it, and then they'll speak on it, and then don't speak on it anymore. And I think that's the same with mental health. I think that's the same with everything. But if something was to happen to a player, or if the player name is in the media, they're gonna talk about that all day, but won't talk about some of the stuff that is happening to us every single day. But I think the good thing about that part is, man, me being in Seattle, Pete Carroll, man, I respect that dude so much, because he would literally have conversations about it. We had a conversation before we played Tennessee, and he wanted to talk about it. And he told us, like, man, I don't know what you guys are feeling, but I want to, like, damn near crying. He wants to know what we were feeling, right? And I think that's the important part. It's just like, Emmanuel Acho. That's my, teammate. He played with me at the Eagles. Mm-hmm. But he's starting to have those conversations with people. That's how you get people to open up, right? A white person may not feel what you're going through, but hey, just to let us know that you actually care is what's important. And let us know you on our side, and let's try to get this thing fixed.
Absolutely. Last question before I turn it back over to Danielle, but I thank you, Mr. Smith, for your dialogue and speaking to me and Danielle this evening. Means a lot.
Bro.
A&M, that's the stamp. That's the new thing for you now, man. How are you preparing athletes as you being a specialist in movement in that regard? But also, what are you doing to prepare your young athletes as well in the mental health aspect? So, the physical aspect as well as the mental. What are you doing for that?
So, man, I started A&M Sports probably 2 years ago, and we just got a facility in February. So that's where I'm at right now. That's why I hope you can't, hear none of the stuff that's going on in the background. But, I started it because every gym that you see, you either have your sports, you either have, football, basketball, soccer, your regular gym. And so I looked at it as an opportunity for me to bring the mental health aspect to it. So I'm working to be a certified life coach now. I do some life coaching with some of my kids. And we talk about that. That's the first thing we talk about. Like, what is your mental life? Do you know what anxiety is? Do you know what depression looks like? So we give them what that looks like. So when it does happen, it's not the first time that they're experiencing it, or it's not the first time that they've seen it, right? I let them know my story too as well. So that's what we're doing to get them prepared, because the athleticism that they have and everything that they bring to the table, that's always going to be there. But football is 85% mental.
Right.
So they come in and we talk about that first. And man, you would be surprised how many of them have so many questions. And like, man, I was feeling this way before the game. So you mean to tell me this was anxiety? I'm like, yeah, that's anxiety. We all go through that, right? But they asked me the question one time. They said, hey, so what is this if I can't get through my anxiety? Well, that's called depression, because anxiety, when you feel like you can't get through it and you feel like it has a hold on you, you get depressed from that, because you feel like, man, I don't know what this is. Like you just don't know, right? And that's what happened to me. And so how I get them to push through that is positive self-talk. I get them to continue to speak to themselves in a positive manner, telling themselves that they're great, that they're worthy, and that they're supposed to be here. Be where your feet are, right? And then the second thing is I tell them, journal, write it down, whatever your thoughts, because like what we're doing right now, you can have a million thoughts in your head.
Absolutely.
That's where anxiety comes from too. It's the thoughts that you're thinking, right? Put them down on paper, and I think that'll help too. So yeah, that's what we kind of do, and how we start, A&M, and how we push them forward on the mental health side, and then the athletic side pretty much take care of itself.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Mr. Marcus Smith, I hope I'm one of many to, bestow upon you some flowers, man. Thank you so much for your time today, for all that you do. And I think people don't realize, man, just to start your journey off and be an illustrious All-American, to have a great professional career, now to A&M, and most importantly, being a Black father in today in America, man, means a lot. So, like I said, let me be one of many, hopefully, in this lifetime to bestow your flowers to you and continue to be that open vessel to share your story with so many who definitely need you in today's world. Thank you, my brother. Peace and blessings.
Man, appreciate it, bro.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, TJ. I think the biggest thing I took from this, about so many gems in here, but positive talk to yourself. That's what everyone can work on, daily affirmations and making sure you're talking to yourself positively. That's something I need to practice more myself and getting in the positive way and positive light there. So I definitely want to thank you. Thank you, TJ, for hosting tonight. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us for this conversation.
No problem.
Definitely, if anyone wants to continue this conversation or reach out to you, is there any way you want to plug anything specific?
Yes. And so if you want to continue this conversation, my Twitter is Marcus Smith II. My Instagram is MoneyMark91. And, feel free to hit me up. I write back. I know some people don't write back, but, I just feel like it's my duty to continue to just have the conversation. You don't know who you might be helping. So that's what I feel like, I should be doing. It's my purpose.
All right. Well said. Thank you.